Dobrý den, welcome back to the channel. I'm here in the beautiful neighborhood of Krč, where I currently live, and as I was brainstorming ideas for today's video, I realized that I have actually lived for more than a month in 5 different apartments in the city of Prague. And that doesn't even include the 6 weeks that I spent quarantined in the small Czech town of Svitavy, which I have a video about and you can check that on my channel. But as a result, I have a pretty good sample of different neighborhoods in Prague, and so I thought today I would give you a tour of all 5 places that I've lived in the city of Prague and tell you about some of the advantages and disadvantages of each and just some things that I liked and disliked about each place. So we're beginning our tour here in Krč, and for obvious reasons I'm not going to put my exact address up on the internet where I'm currently living, but I will show you exactly where my previous apartments were located, and I'll even put some pictures up on the screen of the insides of those apartments so that you can get a feel for what those places were like. So as I said before, this neighborhood that I'm walking around right now is called Krč, which is one of these words that us native English speakers just kind of shake our heads at because there's 3 letters and it has no vowels. So Krč, it's just like a little flick of the tongue. We don't really have words like that in the English language. So I've lived in this neighborhood for about 4 months now, and I think it's my favorite place so far in Prague. And looking around me, it's really not hard to see why. I mean, it's a beautiful, quiet residential area, lots of trees and greenery, totally off the tourist track. There's nothing like that anywhere close to here. And it's very, very well connected with a bus network, and we're kind of nestled right in between the Kačerov and Budějovica metro stations. So actually I'm going to make my way over to Kačerov right now, and we're going to catch a bus to Záleží, which is kind of in the same neighborhood, but a little bit further south in Krč, and that's actually where I spent the first 6 weeks of my time in Prague, so we're going to go check that out as well. So even though I like this neighborhood a lot for all the reasons that I just mentioned, there are some disadvantages. The biggest one would be that the closest major grocery store is actually 1 metro stop away, so you got to get on the metro or get on a bus or just walk over to Budějovica, and then you have everything you need. But one of the nice things about other neighborhoods where I've lived in Prague is the fact that a grocery store was within like a 3-minute walk from where I was living at all times. So when I want to go grocery shopping here, it's a bit more of a trip, and I have to kind of plan my time a little bit more and make sure the metro is open and all of that stuff. And also, obviously, we're not super close to the center here, but to be honest, that's nothing new for me. Usually the neighborhoods I live in are pretty far away from the center. And my apartment here is really super nice. I got a great deal on it. It has a balcony and a piano and no roommates, and it's the type of place I would not have been able to afford if it was in the center. But since it's in Krč and I happened to know the people that own the apartment and I got kind of a special discount on it, I was able to make it work. So I'm super happy about that. So this is kind of my main transportation hub. This is the Kačerov metro and bus stop. And this station kind of connects the neighborhood of Krč to the entire rest of Prague through the red metro line and a number of bus lines that either terminate here, start here, or just stop by here on their way down further south. And you know, I was just complaining about the grocery situation here, but this Potraviny has the best Balkanský sír, which is basically like a Central European version of feta cheese. The best Balkanský sír that I've ever had. And it also has these really, really good farm fresh eggs, and I have no idea where they get them, but they're the best eggs that I have had in the entire city of Prague in this one little Potraviny here. So I don't know what the story is there, but I'm really thankful that I have that. And this little tunnel that goes under the highway at the Kačerov bus station is one of these hidden gems in Prague that nobody knows about, but it's a really cool place. It has this amazing graffiti. I love the shape of the tunnel and the tiles and the way it's lit. It's actually just a really cool place, and it connects here to the Kačerov train stop also. So there's trains that go there from the main station all the way down outside of Prague to Zbraslav and Luka pod Mednikem and lots of cool places. So I'm still here in Krč, but we took the bus 2 stops from Kačerov to the Záleží bus stop, and behind me you can see a wonderful example of a type of Czech apartment building that is called a panelák, which literally means like a panel house. And these paneláks, or paneláky in Czech, were built primarily between the years of 1960 and 1995, and they were part of the communist housing project. I'm going to sneak around the bus here and get a better view of these 3 panelaki here. So thousands of these buildings were constructed during that time in the former Czechoslovakia, and most of them still stand today, and there are still a lot of people living in them. And they were built originally because the communists wanted to just create as much affordable and safe public housing as possible. It was kind of part of the collectivist sentiment that was a big part of the communist project. And it makes sense, you know, if you want to promote this feeling of being part of a collective more than an individual, then it helps to have everybody living in the same sort of place, under the same conditions. So the panelaki were not only very easy to construct cheaply and quickly, but they also promoted the ideological attitudes and ideas that the communists wanted to promote. So it's kind of funny that this was literally the first place that I saw in the Czech Republic once I stepped off of the airplane. The school that I was staying at had arranged for a driver to take me directly to my accommodation, which was right here in this building. And I remember I used this entrance right here, I think it was number 32 or possibly the next one, but I'm pretty sure it was this one. And I walked inside and I got into this, you know, rickety Soviet era elevator and went up to the 5th or 6th floor. And some of these windows that you can see here on the front of the building, those were the windows to my bedroom. So it was actually a very nice, spacious, modern apartment when I got up there. And I'm sure most of the people living in Panelaki today will tell you that these apartments are actually super nice. They're well constructed, they're easy to heat and clean and maintain, and you know, you can live very, very well in one of these apartments. But just because of the stereotypes surrounding this type of Soviet architecture, it certainly didn't help dispel any of the stereotypes that I had about Eastern Europe or the Czech Republic coming directly, you know, fresh off the boat from America. And one of the things I really loved about living in this particular apartment building, in this particular neighborhood, is that because there's so many people living in these panelaki here, and there's not only this building, but there's also several more clustered all around, you basically have all the amenities that you need very, very close at hand. So there's at least 2, maybe 3 grocery stores within a 2 or 3 minute walk up here along this road. There's a very good, but probably a little bit overpriced for this area, sushi restaurant just ahead of me here. And there's a variety of other pubs and shops and drugstores, pharmacies, things like that, all within like less than a 5-minute walk. So it was a very convenient and easy place to live. And this store to me is so Czech because it's basically like an outdoor recreation store focusing on fishing and rafting and things like that. And Czech people are just so into their outdoor recreation that I'm not at all surprised to find a store like this thriving in this neighborhood. And you can see over here, this is kind of a typical residential setup. We have a couple of panelaki, and then in between them, a really very nice playground and park. So many, many thousands of Czech people live in conditions just like this in Prague and all around the Czech Republic. And here we have a really great view of the facade of one of these panelaki. And you can see the pastel colors that have been painted on the facade. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't actually read up on this and done the proper research, but what I've heard is that after the fall of communism, these panelaki, which were originally just plain gray concrete, were painted with these colors to sort of symbolize the freedom of the new era. Which is a really beautiful thing, if indeed that is true. And here you can see some possibly newer variations on the traditional panelak design. So my only complaint about living in this neighborhood is that getting from here to the center actually was quite inconvenient and took a lot of time, because here we're not really close to any metro station. You can get to the Kečerov metro stop with a bus, but that just takes extra time. And so in my experience, getting to the center from here usually took a minimum of like 45 minutes from door to door. But otherwise, putting that aside, I'm actually really glad that I started my time in Prague in a place like this instead of in some tourist Airbnb right in the center, right in the tourist center of Prague, because I actually know a lot of other expats who have never really spent time in a neighborhood like this. They don't really know how the majority of Czech people actually live, even in the capital city. And they're just kind of stuck in this like tourist expat bubble in the center, and I actually know some expats that don't even have a transit pass because they don't need it. They work at home, and all of their favorite hangout spots are in the neighborhood where they live, and all of their friends are other expats who live in the neighborhood where they live. It's just kind of a really shallow and limited way of experiencing a place. So I'm really happy that I got to experience what real Czech living is like, which, as you can see, could not be more different from what it's like in the center of Prague, and how Prague and the Czech Republic are sort of depicted and sold to tourists. So that completes our tour of the places that I've lived in Krč, and now we're going to get back on public transit, take a bus to Kačerov, and then take Kačerov all the way down into the center, because the second place that I lived was the neighborhood of Karlín, which is just north of Žižkov, right in between Vítkov Hill and the Vltava River. And this next place will be quite a strong contrast from what we've just seen, because it's probably the most like expat typical place that I ever lived in Prague, and I only lived there for a little over a month. Let's go check it out. And as a parting shot, I'll just invite you to imagine what it must have been like for this naive American to stare out through the cold, gray November weather at this communist panelák and a smokestack, and then beyond a barren field with nothing in it. I have to admit, there was a part of me that was thinking like, God, what have I done? Why am I here? So we're off the bus back at Kačerov metro stop, and we're gonna get on the red line and go all the way into the center. So I've always loved this interior of the Kačerov metro station because it just looks like it hasn't been updated since about 1973 and is probably one of the more communist Soviet looking metro stations in the whole city. But I love it for that reason. It's like stepping back in time. So we just got off at the Křižíkova metro stop, and we are here right in the middle of the Karlín neighborhood. So right in front of me, lit up with the setting sun, you can see Vítkov Hill, which is this beautiful park that divides Karlín from Žižkov on the other side. So this was the street that I lived on in Karlín for only about a month, because the place that I was living in I found through this booking website called Flatio, which offers like short-term, maybe 1 month to 3 months accommodation. And these apartments that they offer on that website tend to be very high-end, and actually much nicer than I needed at the time, and much nicer than I need right now. But they had like a first-time booking discount, I think. And so the rent was actually a lot cheaper than it would ordinarily have been. So I was able to afford it. But this was my entrance right here, and you can see just from the elevator and the general style of the building. This was actually a very modern building. I'm not sure when it was built, but everything was brand new. I found out after I moved in that it was way bigger than I expected and much bigger than I really needed. It was designed for like 6 people to live there. It actually had a bed downstairs in the kitchen area, and then 2 beds upstairs in this gigantic loft, super high ceilings, and the floor and walls and everything was made out of like heavy-duty concrete and metal materials. So it was a pretty interesting place to live for a month, and I enjoyed being there, but I realized after a month that if they were going to raise the rent on me, it didn't make any sense for me to stay there because I was just a single person and I did not need so much space, and I didn't need a place that was like brand new with all of these super nice amenities. But one thing that I absolutely loved about that apartment is it had these huge windows covering almost the entire back wall. And they gave me an incredible view of this church right here and the Vítkov Hill just beyond. And as far as the Karlín neighborhood goes, you can see that it's really different from Krč. Krč is very residential and very far from the city center, and really looks nothing like the kind of stereotypical center of Prague. Karlín is much more commercial. There's restaurants and bars. It's more hip. There's a lot of young people and like young professionals living here. And as you can see, there's more kind of typical Prague architecture. So here you get a much more urban vibe. There's things to do, places to go that are within walking distance of where you live. There's people out all the time. I really appreciated the fact that you can actually walk through the tunnel through the bottom of Vítkov Hill, and it pops you out just right in the middle of Žižkov. And Žižkov is kind of like the expat hub of Prague. There's tons of bars and restaurants and cool places to go there. So Karlín was a really cool place to live because it's just within easy walking distance of lots and lots of fun things to do. And I mean, you're going to get similar advantages living in Žižkov or Vinohrady or basically anywhere that's kind of in the immediate vicinity of Prague 1. So anywhere near the center, you're going to have some similar advantages. So the most obvious disadvantage, I think, is the price. I mean, even in the apartment that I had in Karlín, where I had the discounted rent, I still was paying like 700 euros a month, I think, something like that, which is way more than I would ever pay right now. But at the time, I wasn't even sure that I was going to stay in Prague for a long time. So I was thinking more short term, and I just needed a place to stay. Someplace that was easy to book, where I didn't have a long-term lease, and that was what I found. And I think in any of these neighborhoods that are close to the center, it's just going to get harder and harder to find a good place at a reasonable price. And the other disadvantage of Karlín and all of these neighborhoods that are near the center, which you can probably notice in the video right now, is that it's really, really noisy. And even in the apartment that I was in near Křižíkova, which was kind of like, it was way off of the road. It was made of like reinforced concrete and like high quality modern materials. It was still really, really noisy. You could still hear all the road noise and, you know, sirens and cars honking and all of that stuff. So that's something that you shouldn't underestimate, because it's really, really hard to get comfortable in a place and sleep well and feel like you can have some peace and quiet when you're just surrounded by roads and cars all the time. And from what I've heard, some of the older buildings in the center of Prague are the absolute worst for noise because they weren't really designed with modern car traffic in mind. So the windows are quite flimsy, sometimes the walls are very thin, and oftentimes, you know, you're trying to sleep right directly next to a road where cars are passing by all the time, and road construction is being done sometimes at like 6 o'clock in the morning. So this is a common complaint of people that live in the center of Prague, is that it's really, really noisy, and it's very hard to kind of set up your life in a way where that doesn't affect just your daily living in that apartment. So the other notably bad thing about lots of the neighborhoods near the center of Prague is that the air pollution can actually get pretty bad. I said in my health video that the air is clean in the Czech Republic, and I think in many places that's true. But one place where it's definitely not true is right in the center of Prague, because you have these very narrow lanes that were not designed for modern car traffic, and then you have tons of traffic, tons of cars driving down these roads all the time. And then on top of that, you have road construction that's kicking up dust all the time, right? So I think if you live in the center of Prague, especially if you have like a window that is quite close to the road, you can feel like you're just breathing in car exhaust and dust from road construction all the time. So if I was going to make a recommendation for someone that's moving to Prague for the first time, I would recommend going like 1 or 2 steps out from the center and finding a place in like Krč, for example, or go even further out than that. And what you're going to find is some place that's actually cheaper. Most importantly, it's quiet, and you have breathable air. And yeah, you're going to sacrifice a little bit on like accessibility of restaurants, clubs, bars, nightlife, that kind of thing. But Prague is a small city. It's not Berlin. It's not Tokyo. You know, you can get around inside of like a half an hour or an hour to most places that you'd ever want to be, and just get a transit pass, and you can take the public transit, and it's really not that big of a deal, in my opinion. And that being said, I have to admit that walking along these beautiful tree-lined streets here with these gorgeous pastel buildings in Karlín, it does make me a little bit nostalgic for the time that I spent living here. This and so many other neighborhoods near the center are gorgeous places to live, and there's so many benefits and advantages of living there, but I'm just saying, like, you need to be realistic about the trade-offs that you're going to make. You're going to have noise, you're going to have pollution, you're going to pay a lot more money for it. Oftentimes you're actually going to be living in older and less well-maintained buildings, so you're going to have other problems related to just the infrastructure of the place that you're living. So, you know, life is full of trade-offs, but I'm here to help you make those decisions from an informed standpoint and actually understand the reality of living in these different places instead of just being taken in by the kind of fairy tale allure of living in the center of Prague. Okay, so that's Karlín. Next up, we're going to get back on the yellow metro line. We're going to go a few stops down to Cesco, Morovska, and I'll show you the next place that I live, which is a neighborhood that is usually referred to as Libeň. So, back down into the metro. I'll see you on the other side. So here we are at the Cesco Morovska metro station, and we're just going to walk down about a block and a half, actually, to the apartment building where I lived for the entire spring and summer of 2020. So I lived here for about 6 or 7 months, I think. And actually first, before we do that, we're going to take a slight detour. Look across the parking lot here where all the buses are gathered at the O2 Arena. When I moved here just before the coronavirus pandemic, I really thought that this was going to be an amazing place to live because the O2 Arena is a venue for all sorts of concerts where international acts from all over the world come and play for huge audiences here in Prague. So in those naive and innocent pre-COVID times, I thought that I was going to have tons of fun here going to concerts and basically just being able to buy a ticket, walk over there and see the concert and then walk right home to my apartment. But obviously that did not happen because in March of 2020, right after I moved in here, everything shut down and there were no concerts at all, and O2 Arena was just a ghost town the entire time. So here's the entrance to the building. This is where I walked in. So as far as benefits of living in this neighborhood, I think they're pretty obvious. We're really, really close to the Cesco Morovska metro stop, so it's pretty easy to get everywhere where you might want to go. And not only that, but there's also a tram stop, a couple of tram stops just within like a 5-minute walk. And then just a little bit further down the road, we have the Libeň train station, which connects you to Hlavní nádraží, basically almost anywhere in the Prague area where you can get by train. Here's another benefit of living in this neighborhood. We have the Galerie Harfa, which is one of the biggest malls in Prague. So in this mall we have, most importantly, an Albert hypermarket, which is like a gigantic supermarket that has everything you could possibly need. We have a DM, which is a German drugstore chain that has lots of the stuff that a standard supermarket will not have. And the final reason I loved living here is that just about a 5-minute walk away from my apartment, we had this workout park. You know I love a good workout park, and this one has everything you need. And then just past the workout park, there's a bike path that goes across the street here, and then it connects to an entire long network of parks that stretches like miles and miles in that direction. One day I just walked along this trail as far as it went just to see where it would lead, and I think I walked for like 2 or 3 hours. I did not get to the end of it. And my complaints about living in this neighborhood are pretty standard. It was way too expensive. I think maybe I got kind of a bad deal because I was a foreigner, and also the location is just so perfect with all of this public transit and all of these convenient amenities that I think the owner just felt justified in charging a lot more for a tiny studio apartment with some real like infrastructure problems than I think is really fair. And what I mean by that is that the building I was in was very old and it just had a lot of issues that I didn't know about when I signed the lease. So for example, I had to fix the plumbing, which took like 3 weeks. So I couldn't even use my kitchen sink for 3 weeks. The hot water was not like a hot water tank. It was just one of those things, one of those gas water heaters that they put on the wall. And the pilot light was constantly going out, and there were other problems with the hot water. So half the time I was taking cold showers and just, calling back and forth with my landlord trying to get these problems solved. So taking all those things into account, it was way too expensive. I mean, I'm spending like 2/3 of the amount right now on a much bigger, nicer place in a modern building that has none of those problems. So once again, lesson learned. And my second complaint is that this was actually the noisiest place I've ever lived in my life. The walls were like paper thin, and whoever was living next door to me was like, I think they were like 19 or 20 years old, and they were just partying every single night. Loud music, laughing their asses off, just like nightmare neighbors when you have walls that are, the thickness of tissue paper. And then the windows were not thick enough to keep out the street noise. So starting at like 6 o'clock in the morning, I would hear like jackhammers and road construction noises, plus like trucks, shipping trucks that were like backing up, beeping, and motorcycles with no muffler just going past. So yeah, it was, from a noise perspective, it was kind of a nightmare. I actually remember trying to do like some online English and guitar lessons from out of that apartment. And even with the windows closed, the street noise was so bad that we could barely even do the lesson. We're starting to lose our light here, so we're going to move on to the final stop on our tour, which is all the way on the opposite side of Prague, along the yellow metro line. And it's a big neighborhood called Stodůlky. So we're going to get back on the yellow metro line and go all the way back across the center and get off at the Hurka metro stop. Okay, so last stop on our journey, and it's a good thing too because it's getting really dark, actually. Here we are at the Hurka metro stop. So this is kind of like the main courtyard out here outside of the Hurka metro stop. We have an Albert supermarket, we have the Česká pošta, the post office, and then a couple of restaurants and a mini mart and some other convenient stuff over there. So this is kind of what this entire neighborhood looks like. So we're going to walk over here to the edge of this park and take a look at some of the beautiful Czech panelaki across the way. Here in the fading light, I'm not sure exactly how much we'll see, but we're going to try anyway. So this is one of my favorite parts of living in this neighborhood, is we had this park down here with the lake, and then across the park, basically everywhere you look, we have these beautiful apartment buildings in about a 180-degree radius here. So this was one of my favorite places to just come and enjoy the view and kind of hang out. It's not crowded, it's not noisy, it's not polluted, so this was one of my go-to spots. So I'm actually not sure what the word Hurka means in Czech, but I'm just going to take a guess that it means like something like little hill. If I'm wrong about that, please correct my mistake in the comments, but that's my guess, and it would make sense that this metro stop would be called Hurka because it literally is on a little hill here overlooking this just sort of empty field here, and then the apartment buildings across the park there. So there's really not much more to see in this neighborhood. It's pretty much just apartment buildings and some little shops here and there, and it all looks more or less like this. But I actually really enjoyed living in this neighborhood because it just felt super authentic. It felt very Czech, like once again, the way the Czech people actually live here in the Czech Republic. So I really don't have any complaints at all about this neighborhood. It's a little bit far from the center, but I've already said that that's not really a big deal for me. And just being back here actually reminds me of the vibe of this place and how much I really enjoyed spending time here. So the only reason that I moved from here actually is because I just got a great offer and a great opportunity to take that apartment in Krč that had a balcony and a piano and no roommates, and it was just a great opportunity, so I grabbed it. And the location in Krč is not really any worse than this one, but I think if I hadn't had that opportunity, I would have kept living here for quite a while and been perfectly happy to do so. So that concludes my tour of neighborhoods where I have lived in Prague. I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and drop a comment down below. Tell me where you live in Prague, or tell me some of your favorite neighborhoods that I didn't mention in this video. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, all that stuff helps me out a lot, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks again. Ciao.